want to take a look at another Liz Cheney moment we looked at in the last segment. Her calling out Jim Jordan, saying he would be a terrible Speaker of the House. True. And then here she's calling attention to something that I've been trying to call attention to a lot on this show, which is not only did Trump say something so egregious, such as calling for the execution of his former top general, but number one, so many news outlets did not cover it either at all or nearly enough. And number two, the Republican Party, who proclaims to be so pro-military and pro the troops, has been silent on this. And so we can't just let this fall into the dustbin of history. We have to call attention to this dangerous rhetoric and the dangerous silence on the part of Republicans. Here from Truth Social, we'll look at the message first, then look at Liz Cheney calling attention to it. Mark Milley, who led perhaps the most embarrassing moment in American history, Trump wrote, with his grossly incompetent implementation of the withdrawal from Afghanistan costing many lives, leaving behind hundreds of American citizens and handing over billions of dollars of the finest military equipment ever made, will be leaving the military next week. This will be a time for all citizens of the USA to celebrate. This guy turned out to be a woke train wreck who, if the fake news reporting is correct, was actually dealing with China to give them a heads up on the thinking of the President of the United States. This is an act so egregious that in times gone by, the punishment would have been death. Death. Someone who served their country loyally for 40 plus years in the military. And Trump is saying, essentially, he deserves death. A war between China and the United States could have been the result of this treasonous act, to be continued. Now, as a reminder, this is Trump responding to reporting that top military leaders at the end of Trump's presidency, because of how erratically Trump was acting, some other leaders in other countries, such as China, were getting the impression, there was some reporting indicating this, there was a question about it, that Trump might try to strike other countries to justify, based on a conflict now being present, him staying in the White House. Because he was doing all these other things, now we're seeing potentially against the law to do the same. And so then, to help Trump and keep things stable, military leaders like Esper, like Milley, were reaching out to their counterparts in other countries, in this case, China, saying, all is well, things are going to be stable, Trump's not going to attack you, everything's okay, essentially. Which is good. As Josiah pointed out during one of our collaborations, that was actually helping Trump out in a major way. But he sees it as him being slighted in some fashion and says that's something that justifies the death of his former top general. Very vile and dangerous. And John Kelly, his former chief of staff, told CNN that he believes that was Trump calling his followers to do so, saying, this guy deserves an execution. He's not going to get it under our system of justice today, but he deserves it. Wink, wink. Very frightening. Here's Liz Cheney calling this out.
The Republican Party today is in a vice grip, in a cult of personality. And I had certainly hoped that we would, see a time when the party had moved past this. I had hoped that we would find ourselves after the select committee hearings, certainly in a rational world after the criminal indictments, you would see a Republican Party that had said, that is not who we are. We're going to reject that. But that isn't what's happening today. And I will give you one example if people doubt whether or not that's an accurate description of the Republican Party. And it's an example from the last 2 weeks. In the last 2 weeks, Donald Trump said that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff should be executed for treason. And the response from Republicans, with one or two exceptions, I think Mike Pence condemned the remarks, maybe there were one or two others who did, but for the most part, the response has been silence. Now, if you want to have any sort of a measurement of how far the party has moved from the party of Ronald Reagan, that's it. And what I worry about is...
And then I'll couple this, as we've been doing over and over again, with the reporting from CNN. John Kelly, also general, also served alongside Trump loyally, longest serving chief of staff under the Trump administration, said, quote, "A person that thinks those who defend their country in uniform or are shot down or seriously wounded in combat or spend years being tortured as POWs are all suckers, quote, suckers, because there's nothing in it for them. A person does not want to be seen in the presence of military amputees because it doesn't look good for me." And we've read more of those quotes previously. That's what Trump had to say, according to people who worked right alongside him, who were present for these moments, who themselves served their country, John Kelly, Mark Milley, and others. The pro-military party, the For the Troops party, which I never thought it was fair for them to try to exclusively take labels such as For the Troops. And often they voted against legislation that would indicate that. But that was their branding. Are willing to, that party is, and those individuals are willing to be silent when it comes to this. Trump threatening a respected lifelong service member because not what you read in that True Social post, but instead because Trump is upset that Mark Milley reportedly behind the scenes is terrified of the prospect of a second Trump term and is telling people about how terrible that would be for the country. That's why Trump said this. And also more confirmations that Trump has this to say about the troops, about people who lose their lives or are tortured in combat in private. Pro-military party stands behind that. By the way, Jake Tapper on CNN made a great point about this whole saga.
Again, shocked, not surprised me, is the lack of response from Republicans. I mean, I don't know if privately you're hearing from Republicans something, but publicly, certainly, if any other politician, Democrat or Republican, had said anything like this, you would think there would be outrage.
When Barack Obama saluted a Marine as president while holding a cup of coffee in his hand, that was Fox News banner headlines for a week, just because he held the coffee in his hand while he did a salute. So, correct. It's outrageous. And one of the things that I think has escaped the notice of a lot of people, but Olivier Knox in the Washington Post noticed today, is that what General Kelly picked up on, that the statement about the assassination, or the execution rather.
And then he makes the point that he was told by Kelly, or CNN was in this reporting, that Kelly sees this as a direct call to action to Trump supporters to go after Mark Milley, which that's pretty clear to me as well. But the silence is deafening for sure. Last thing I'll add, just reminding all of you of this. Despite the extraordinary nature of Trump's suggestion, as Media Matters reported, from 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, September 22nd, when Trump posted on Truth Social, through 9 a.m. Eastern Time on September 26th, ABC's Good Morning America, World News Tonight, and This Week, CBS's Mornings, Evening News, and Face the Nation, and NBC's Today, Nightly News, and Meet the Press all failed to mention the post. Fox News obviously ignored it. CNN, MSNBC were the only two mainstream media television outlets in that time frame that mentioned the post. That's not acceptable. If they have time for all these stories that we see being covered, this has to be covered. And it has to be called out that not only is this vile for Trump to have said, Trump to have done in the case of some of these stories, it's so hypocritical and so dishonest and should enrage us all that this is the guy, Republicans, who made it a point to say they were for the military, the troops, veterans, and tried to exclusively take that label, those labels, are lining up behind that. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show and get a bonus show on the weekends, you can do so by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/membership. That's lukebeasleyshow.com/membership, and there's a link in the description.